the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act. Okay, let's go through the act first and understand the issues that we're dealing with in terms of the senior citizen law for the time being in force. Now, what happens is, first of all, we need to understand the pre 2007 position and the post 2007 position. I would really break the entire development of this law into three phases. See, when you're looking at the entire breakdown of the act, what we're really looking at is the three phases. So, pre 2007, pre enforcement of the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act. Then you have the period of 2007 to 2010. That was post enactment, pre enforcement. Well, senior citizens' rights were guarded even pre 2007. Now, the question is, senior citizens in the broad sense were not really governed by any law. It was up to the state to take precautions within the meaning of Article 41 of the Directive Principles of State Policy. When you're talking of parents, now when I'm talking of parents, I'm talking strictly of parents, not any senior citizen. Parents were covered under Chapter 9, that is Section 125 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Again, I will discuss the differences towards the end of the presentation, and we'll actually discuss, what were the positions under the CRPC as opposed to the more recent provisions under the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act. Now, let's take the long title. Let's read what the act has in store, because the long title is the crux of the act. It's it literally spells out for us what the act is all about. And when you read it, an act to provide for the more effective provisions for the maintenance and welfare of parents and senior citizens, guaranteed and recognized under the Constitution, and for matters connected therewith and incidental thereto. Now, when you're looking at this, let's break it down. Let's understand it. An act, of course, to provide for more effective. Now, note, when we're saying more effective, it clearly goes back to saying that, yes, pre 2007, pre this act, there are provisions, but we need a more consolidated law. We need a more effective law. And therefore, of course, the whole question of this act coming into place, saying this is a dedicated law only to deal with the rights of parents and senior citizens. The CRPC covers numerous aspects, and there's just one chapter in one section that really deals with it. So here we have a dedicated law that deals with parents and senior citizens. So that's great. One, we have a more effective law, more effective provisions, an entire act dealing with all of these issues. Maintenance and welfare. Now, one is maintenance. See, maintenance was covered under the Code of Criminal Procedure. Welfare in its broader sense, because I'm going to deal with welfare in the broader sense of it in terms of Article 21 and Article 41 later. Here, what happens is this act allows for maintenance and welfare. So you need to focus on that whole concept of welfare, because it's also looking at the welfare of senior citizens apart from merely the aspect of providing maintenance. Guaranteed and recognized under the Constitution of India, and of course the matters connected therewith and incidental thereto. Now let's take the object of the act, and if you look at the social situation 2007, 6-7, when it was being passed in Parliament, and look at the entire structuring of it. One is, most families were shifting to nuclear families. The concept of the joint family dying, nuclear families coming up, children marrying and getting away, parents not being looked after or being neglected was a fundamental question that came in. Married children residing with parents decreasing is the crux of it. As parents and senior citizens residing back home in India, and of course, not always do they have their own means to support themselves. The population of senior citizens also on the rise would mean the government needed to actually take care of their needs. Now let's go into the whole question of right to life and personal liberty. Most of the law students have already discussed this with me earlier in one of the other topics, but of course, right to life is a very crucial thing. Now, when you're looking at it, two major angles that you need to really understand: right to life and personal liberty. So while, of course, the personal liberty of the senior citizens is not affected, the senior citizens need to enjoy a holistic standard of living. Now, we'll just look at a few definitions from the Act, the very specific definitions which the Act contains and which we need to consider. children, for one, includes sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, and does not include a minor. So when you're talking about parents, the maintenance of parents doesn't necessarily mean that the parent is a senior citizen. Every parent who is unable to maintain himself or herself out of his or her own means and cannot do so, if you cannot maintain yourself out of your own means, irrespective of your age, your child can maintain you, you're entitled to maintenance. Senior citizens is purely for people above the age of 60. Maintenance includes food, clothing, residence, and medical attendance and treatment. So it's not only food, clothing, shelter, but it also includes medical treatment and medical attendance, which means even as a parent or a senior citizen, if you're covering maintenance, you would also probably want to consider if you need a full-time attendant or an in-house nurse if the situation so demands. Relative is the next definition, and the meaning of relative would include legal heir of a childless senior citizen. Note, legal heir of a childless senior citizen who is not minor and is in possession or would inherit after his death the properties. Now, the question is, when they say inherit the properties, you really cannot guarantee this, because again, the question is, there is the whole angle of testamentary disposition. When you say legal heir, it would mean the person who is ordinarily entitled to receive the property under the law of succession. But of course, you cannot really say that, because if, for instance, there is a will made, and by will the property devolves to a trust, or is given, is bequeathed to a charitable institution for that matter, you really couldn't guarantee that you would be the person to inherit that property. But what they mean is the legal heir is the person that would, under the law of succession, in the ordinary course of the operation of law, be entitled to the property. Now, very importantly, section 4, which covers the whole gamut of who can file an application, how does an application get filed, what are the procedures, so on and so forth. First of all, a senior citizen, including a parent, that's subsection 1, who is unable to maintain himself or herself out of the earnings or out of the property owned by him, shall be entitled to make an application under section 5 in case of. Now, the question is a parent or a senior citizen who cannot maintain himself or herself out of their own earnings, savings, or property owned by him. Property, again, would be construed in the broader sense, so it would mean movable and immovable land, property, flats, etc., or property in even the monetary sense of that term. So basically, only a parent who cannot, literally fund the expenditure himself or herself is entitled to move an application. In case of a parent or grandparent against one or more of his children not being a minor. Application for maintenance, that's largely the provisions of section 4. Good question, who can file an application and where can it be filed? Firstly, when you're talking of filing an application, the application for maintenance under section 4 can be made, one, by the senior citizen himself or herself. If the senior citizen is not capable of filing it in person by way of infirmity or incapacity due to physical or other constraints, then in such case, by an organization or a person duly authorized by him. So by either a specific power of attorney or by a letter of authorization, you can authorize another person to file the application on your behalf. But ideally speaking, as far as possible, the senior citizen should file the application himself or herself. The last is, of course, where the tribunal takes suo motu cognizance, which means it takes cognizance on its own instance. When you're talking of that, what you really would understand is these are cases, of course, where the media has highlighted it, or it's been highlighted on social media, and it has been brought to the attention of the concerned officers or the tribunal. In such a case, what really happens is the tribunal would initiate suo motu action against the children to secure the rights and interests of the senior citizens. Jurisdiction. This is one of the few acts where you have the liberty to file in the plaintiff's place of residence. See, normally when you go as per the CPC or the CRPC, it's always in the court of jurisdiction where the defendant has his residence, or where the defendant is known to last reside. Proceedings under Section 5, and that's the jurisdiction clause under Section 6, can be filed where the senior citizen resides or where the children or the relative resides. So you have that option in both cases. The parent, now this is something that you need to know from the parent's perspective. First of all, you need to, when you're moving an application to the tribunal, you need to first of all convince the tribunal that one, you cannot survive out of your own means, out of your own property or income. Two, you need to make sure that you convince the court that your children have the ability to make those payments or basically to maintain you. And then, of course, if the court is satisfied of both these grounds, they would generally issue orders that the child is directed to maintain the parent or senior citizen. The maximum allowance as per for maintenance as per the state of Maharashtra is 10,000 rupees. Again, as per the rules, what they've said is 10,000 is the total amount a child is obliged to pay. So in case there are, you're splitting between two parents or you're splitting between parents and grandparents, the 10,000 would have to be distributed, because you can't really ask a kid to pay a maximum of 10,000 to each possible case. Section 11, enforcement copy to be given to both sides of the proceedings, parent to be given a copy without payment of fees. And then, of course, Chapter 9 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, which I spoke about earlier, would be used to enforce the order. That means, of course, forfeiture of property, and finally, arrest if the child does not make that payment, because there has to be some mode of enforcement. Otherwise, what happens is these orders, what we in law call a brutum fulmen, or merely an order on paper. These orders would just be passed, but there would be really no tool in the hands of the courts as well as the senior citizens to actually enforce it, which is why you have the enforcement provisions under Chapter 9, which means, of course, forfeiture of property and eventually arrests if the orders are not complied with or not fulfilled. Award of interest, Section 14. Of course, interest from the time of filing the application to the time of the actual enforcement of the order. So in case there are payments for all that time that there was no payment from the time of the application, the court can direct payment of interest. Section 15 actually says where the parent or senior citizen is aggrieved by the order of the tribunal, he may move to the appellate authority under the Act. Now, when you say that, I mean, generally what we would have understood earlier was the person aggrieved by the order goes. But effectively, when you see the preamble to the Act, when you see the legislative intent, the Act is purely made to protect senior citizens. So there is obviously no direct option given to children to move to the appellate authority. Now, the question is, if your children listening to this session, you're going to ask me, I have no right to redressal, I have no right to legal remedy, or an option of appealing the order of the tribunal. Yes, you do. You'll have to move a writ petition in the High Court challenging the order of the tribunal, because under Article 227 of the Constitution, you can move a writ where there is no appellate authority or no other legal redressal option available to you. Section 17, under the Act, again, there is no option. I mean, legally speaking, legal professionals like the advocates on this chat and myself are totally barred. Article 41, Directive Principles of State Policy, that's Article 41 of the Constitution. Public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. So you'd really want to focus on the old age and disablement part. That's the provisions to parents and senior citizens. Section 23 is something that you'd be fabulously amazed with, because that is something that all senior citizens who own property would jump for joy at when you see Section 23. What Section 23 talks about is if you gift property in your lifetime. I'm not talking of bequeathing under a will, but if you make a gift deed, if you make any gift or transfer of property to a child or to a relative with a condition, and I think we have lawyers and aspiring budding lawyers on this group, I want to really bring this out to you, because note there is a clause in this that says if it is made with the intention that the child or a relative maintains or looks after the parent or senior citizen. Now, as a lawyer and even as a parent or senior citizen, if you intend to gift your property to a child, when you're making a gift deed, please ensure that you advocate, and as advocates, please ensure that when you're doing this for a senior citizen client, this provision that it's being done within the ambit of Section 23 of the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act, and that it is purely on the condition that the child maintains you, is mentioned directly, specifically in written terms, because that makes it much easier when you have to go to the tribunal or when you have to go to court to quash that gift deed, because Section 23 gives the senior citizen that liberty that when the gift deed is made with a provision that the child or the relative looks after that parent or senior citizen, and the parent or senior citizen, I mean, the child or the relative fails to look after that parent or senior citizen, in such a case, what happens is this gift deed can be declared null and void by the tribunal. You can cancel the gift deed. Exposure and abandonment of senior citizens, again, is another provision which was not available under Chapter 9, Section 125 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. This came in purely with the Act of 2007, which makes it mandatory for a child to not only ensure that the parent or the senior citizen has the maintenance being paid, but also it makes sure that the parent or senior citizen is not abandoned. Now, the question of abandonment again is something that I've discussed at various forums, both private and public, as to what is really considered abandonment. Because is it absolute total abandonment as the letter of the law would spell it, or would it also mean constructive abandonment, in the sense when you're talking about, for instance, a person with Alzheimer's or any other mental illness where the mental faculty of the person is being questioned or is being raised in question? The question is, letting such person even wander out on a street unattended could be actually interpreted as constructive abandonment, because you're exposing such senior citizen to severe risk. Another thing that what senior citizens want to consider is where the cases of matters not being brought before the tribunal are concerned, is many senior citizens are reluctant to take their own children to the tribunal, or basically take their own children to court. So that is why there is a sense of reluctance in moving the tribunals. The tribunals have been functioning fabulously well. For parents and senior citizens, genuinely this is a great thing, because it becomes really easy. The application form is something that you would want to also consider. You will get the forms on the net. My book also has it in the appendices, but in what you would really like to know, and this is something very encouraging for senior citizens, especially if you are planning to file a complaint. The form that is there is a very simple form in layman language. It is not in a petition format, it's more a form. So it just says details about yourself, your name, address, how much do you earn, details of your property, details of your kids, how many kids do you have, whether your spouse is living or not, how are you maintaining yourself presently, how do how much do you estimate your children's asset value to be and income to be, and causes for why the tribunal should order maintenance. So it's very simple. It's in a form. It's not really the typical kind of courtroom pleadings that you would need to file. So it's absolutely do it yourself. You don't have to worry about getting technical and professional help. It's extremely simple. All you need to do is simply piece it out together, fill in the form, and there you go across to the nearest office, file it, and you're good to go. I think with that, I've pretty much covered the entire thing. That's the act for you.
Thank you very much, Floyd, for such a wonderful explanation about the rights, about the benefits, and also special tribunals, speedy procedure.